Good morning, good morning, good morning. Are we filming? I hope so. Apologies for my face being so close up to the camera. I'm going to be demonstrating, so this is going to work really well for us. Good morning, Karen Frankel here. Hoping to get you all get drawing, or help you all get drawing, even if you think you can't. I'm here to give you my thoughts about our attitudes towards drawing, as well as demonstrations such as we've got this morning. Lovely to have you on board. Welcome. We've got a first person there. Because my face is going to be turned away from the camera, I'm filming on my phone again, so I'm not sure. Yay, I can see. Brian, thank you very much. I can see your comments. That's wonderful. Yay, something's working today. I've now got my camera on a tripod so that it's not going to wobble when I demonstrate, and I've got my paper on an easel, so that's not going to wobble, and hopefully we'll all get there and be happy. If you're on watching the replay, I'd love you to put hashtag replay in the comments just so that I know that you've been here, and of course ask me any questions. So let's get to it. I sent out a video based on an analogy that a favorite tutor of mine described. It's, excuse me, the favorite tutor's name is Tony Smybert. He's in Tasmania, and he's of a tennis sport, thinking about awareness, attention, and focus. And the bigger picture, awareness, is about, for the tennis player, being aware of the whole size of the tennis court. He doesn't want to hit the balls out. He needs to be able to get his serve into the service box. So he needs to be at the outset aware of the whole playing surface. If he's playing singles, he plays within the tram lines. So he has to be aware of that as a starting point. So for our drawings, we're just going to use a photograph here. It was easier to use that than to set up a still life. I couldn't quite work out getting the drawing close and the picture close other than putting that up. Thanks for the thumbs up. Obviously everything's working. So that's a still life that I had in the studio, the photograph. And to start off with, I need to be aware of my picture size. So am I going to use an A4 piece? Am I going to use what size canvas am I going to use? And more importantly, how am I going to fit that drawing into the size of the picture? So I'm just going to draw on something like that. It's more or less the same size for our purpose of the demonstration. And I need to be aware of how I'm going to fit my drawing in there. And often my favorite subject, or one of them, is thumbnails. I'm not going to be talking about thumbnails today, but it's a similar preparation of awareness of the whole space. So if I'm aware of how these things fit in here, I may choose to cut that off into a square. I may choose to focus in on one thing. Whatever I'm choosing to draw, I need to know how big the whole paper is. And it is, if you're sketching, it is quite useful to have a border on your page so that you know where you're heading. Even if you're drawing on a full page, for some reason, a full page of a sketchbook, for some reason we don't like going to the edge of the page. So put a border in and then be aware of that border. So that's going to be my border. How am I going to put those things within that border? Now, the picture's done a lot of work for me, the photograph. It has cut things off. But if I were looking at a still life, I wouldn't have those borders on unless I'm looking through a viewfinder. But just for argument's sake, if I were looking at in reality, if I put my pots and things all in the middle like that, the awareness of the whole space is not very attractive. So I haven't used my borders to enhance my drawing if I'm putting my still life right in the middle. So that's an awareness thing, being aware of into those borders and how they're going to work within those borders. So if I actually start looking at how they fit, I really like how photographs cut the edges off our world, and that things go off the edges so that they create these beautiful shapes. See that long, thin, triangular shape against the edge of. So even that arbitrary table edge there is creating a beautiful negative shape against the edge. Even that line there is creating a good shape against our border. So be aware of the whole border. I'm going to put that pot in there, and you can see I'm holding my pencil way, way back. I'm loosely putting things in to be aware of the whole border. It's the placement of the ball in the court. I'm deliberately placing it so that, in this case going out of the court, no, but ending at the border, I want those lovely shapes in there. Okay, so paying attention, not paying attention yet, being aware of how these things fit into our border. Now, I don't particularly like this space here, so being aware of the border, that table edge that I mentioned earlier, that's a table in a studio. It's got nothing to do with the table that's here, but it's showing me that a device like that might be quite nice to cut it off. I put that there, and it was closer to the middle. I didn't want it to be in the middle. Again, being aware of the proportions, so I've taken it down a little bit, and that bit that I mentioned there, I really quite like how that makes these spaces here a lot more interesting. Maybe even, there's a little pot back there, I've only just noticed, or there's a dish back there. Maybe one of those things can go into the background as well, so that my eye travels in and out of the sketch. So that's awareness, being aware of your whole space and how are you going to fill that space. I've just noticed in the photograph, it's cutting the bottom of that off. You can try that, you go, okay, and this is what you would be doing in a thumbnail actually. Do I want to cut it off there? Do I like that better? But we'll stick to this for now, for our demonstration. Okay, so that's our awareness of how things are placed within our page, within our border. The next thing we're moving on to is attention. And to carry on with the tennis analogy, attention is knowing where your opponent is standing in the court, so that you're paying attention to that, you're paying attention to the direction you think he's going to run in, so that when you return the ball, you try to put the ball behind him. You don't want to hit the ball towards him, towards his strong forearm. You might want to hit the ball straight at his chest. That's a choice you make based on the attention that you are paying to what's going on. You need also to pay attention, be aware of and pay attention to the wind conditions, the sun conditions, all of that sort of thing as well. So in terms of our drawing, our attention now needs to be paying attention to how big things are relative to each other, where are they relative to each other. There's a lovely space between that pot and that pot. In an earlier trial that I did of this to make sure I could get it reasonably well this morning, I had drawn this pot out the back there, and then I paid attention and I saw that there's this lovely negative shape in between. Now, you can choose to not have that, but pay attention first. So see that something exists and then make a decision on whether that's useful for your drawing. So yes, I do like that negative shape. I don't actually want it to just touch, but in the meantime, I'm just placing things where I want them, paying attention to what looks good. Now I'm paying attention to those stones and things on the bottom there, which I really like because they give great interest to the shape of the pot behind the stone. Cheers, it's a bit hot in Perth today. So, pay attention also to how the tones work with each other. Often we look at something and we make decisions based on what the real thing looks like. And here, for example, the shine on the edge of that black pot, we might look closely at that and focus at that and go, oh, that's really light, I'm going to leave that really light. But if we step back and we go, how light is that compared to that, compared to the background light, compared to that light, is it that light? So pay careful attention. This pot that I decided to add in, I'm quite pleased I did decide, because I've got a lovely dark against that tiny light there. In this case, that tiny light is probably going to be quite an important area to put in. So our awareness needs to be on proportions, on size versus size, on placement of things relating to other things. So where is that pot relative to this? I've just noticed there's another pot in the background which has got all these tall grasses in, so maybe I need to put something in there. Probably wouldn't be quite that. Silly person. This is hidden by, call that paying attention. This is hidden by, the pot is hidden by this plant here, which I haven't suggested at all. So if I suggest that pot there, that foliage there, then I can put that pot in the background, and then these things are coming out of it. So I don't know if that looks like a bit of a mess at the moment. It's probably more like a big thumbnail, but this is me trying to pay attention to where things are. So I'm looking there, that leaf goes over the edge of the front of the pot. So we've got things like that. And part of the attention is, as I've been saying, is the attention of darks and lights. So I'm quickly going to establish some darks and lights. And it's the darks and lights that will help us to see these things as 3 dimensions. So now the dark, I'm aware that that leaf is the same tone as that pot, but I'm choosing to keep it lighter so that the leaves stand out. Okay, so already you can see that things are looking a little bit more 3-dimensional. Now, I am not trying to put any marks in at the moment, although I did cross-hatch that because I thought that might be at least totally contradicted myself. I was paying attention to what marks. I wanted it to resemble the weave of the basket there, which you probably can't see at this stage. And so I'm paying attention to how the darks and lights work off each other. If I'm going to have this side of that pot dark, what am I going to do about that negative shape? Will I make it even darker? That looks quite good. I don't mind that, but I think I'll put a rock there, a stone there. See, I do use erasers. Some of my students think I don't. I've mellowed over the years. Okay, so I have been aware of my whole border. I am paying attention to the the proportions, the size, where things are relative to each other. There's some plants coming up like that. How big are these plants in the scheme of things? We often draw flowers way too small. I might have drawn them a little bit big. I haven't put in this plant here, and so I'm just going to chuck it in. And I've done what my head's wanted me to do. I should have turned off the sound on my phone. Sorry about that. I hope nobody phones. I forgot all about that. That's thrown me. If I look here, the stem of this plant actually goes right to the front of the pot. It doesn't come out of the middle of the pot like your head wants it to. So I'm going to bring that down, and I'm going to go, okay, yeah, that works quite nicely with that dark. So I am also now being aware. So I am being aware and attentive and focused all at the same time. One sometimes comes after the other, so attention comes after the awareness, but we have to pay attention all the time, and we have to be aware all the time. And the focus, which I'm now going to talk about, means coming in and making some decisions about drawing individual items, how strong lines are. So the choice of mark to show the weave of this basket, that would be focusing in on. Now, I've just filled that in because I've wanted to show the weave on the top there, but what I've forgotten about is paying attention to the light and the dark that I wanted to have. So you've got to be aware of all these things all the time. So if I lighten off that side with my trusty kneadable eraser, that's what I love about it. You can lighten the tone without changing the mark. Then I can still have the light side of that pot and a dark side and still show the texture of the pot. There is a shadow on the pot there that I've just noticed. Do I want to put it in to the detriment of showing the light on the pot? So, you know, I have often seen students look at something like that shadow and go, oh, that's really dark, because they've focused in just on that, but they haven't paid attention to how that relates to everything else in the picture. And if you pay attention to how that relates to everything else in the picture, it's hardly there, it's just a suggestion. So when you're focusing, always still be aware of how it relates to everything else. And as you're adding things in, you are still aware of how they fit in with the border. So this is very much a large thumbnail plan. I would probably be doing it a lot more carefully if I were spending 2 hours sketching this. But it is a demonstration of how to use the awareness, attention, and focus. So the analogy with the tennis player for focus, as that ball is coming towards him, as it's leaving the racket, he is focusing on that ball coming towards him and how he's going to hit it, where it's going. He's calculating very quickly, obviously subconsciously, and for him that's the focus of that particular ball and how he's going to hit it. But encompassed in that, or as well as that, he's still got to be aware of the whole court, because he doesn't want the ball to be out. He's still got to be aware of where his opponent is so that it doesn't hit the ball to a convenient place for his opponent. So he's constantly being aware, attentive, and focused. So it's a really lovely analogy for keeping our focus and awareness alive when you're sketching. You've constantly got to bounce from the one thing to the other. You don't put in your pieces and then focus on the one thing to the detriment of everything else. Now what I'm trying to do here is put in some of these darks around these leaves that I've chosen to leave lighter, and I'm not doing particularly well. I'm not quite sure what I'm doing. But hey, this is the dare to stuff it up moment I spoke about. If I want to put that foliage in, can you see how I'm holding my pencil? I like to hold it loosely. If you get a document sleeve and you put it over your photograph, you can actually draw that and find a mark which will help it resemble foliage. I might now look at the darks and lights, because I haven't yet, of these lovely long things. I need to be aware that they are in the background. They're not as far forward as these. In this picture, everything is kind of blended together. So I need to be aware of how am I going to make them fit. So maybe just simple half-tone shades in there. So that's a choice I'm making. Here there's lots of darks and lights. I'm choosing not to put that in because I don't want to take the attention away from the things in the foreground, but I do want to fill the whole space. So this, what am I doing with this thing? So again, I'm trying to mark make so that it emulates that plant. I'm doing a lot of looking there instead of looking here while I'm drawing. Okay, going back to my attention of darks and lights, I really want to emphasize the darks in there. So you're constantly moving around, changing. I am not a fan of finishing off one piece and then moving to the next and moving to the next. I find that quite difficult to keep my attention and awareness going of what's happening in the rest of the picture then. If I focus on one thing, I know that different artists have different feelings about that. And they're not right or wrong, it's a choice that you make. Not sure how that's looking, not too bad. Now I would be putting too much work in this if it was a thumbnail at this stage, so I'm happy to call it a sketch. I am demonstrating, and I don't usually work up high, and I don't usually work on the side of my picture. So forgive my transgressions. Look what I've done there. I have not even put some foliage down here, which would clearly come out of the pot. Same mistake I made there. That's looking much better. You can put marks on top of tone. Marks do not have to be on white paper, and of course I have left that all white, so I'm going backwards and forwards between focusing in and paying attention. I really like that light down there, but as I said before, it's probably not quite that light, so I might put some tone in there, but it's going to be still light. I really like, however, how the pot actually bends down like that, gets shadow there, and there's a lovely line, jaggedy line, even though those rocks, stones are in shadow, they are clearly lighter than the bottom of that pot. So that's the stones and the pot working against each other. I'm trying to put in some elliptical shapes here so that the pot looks elliptical instead of flat. Cylindrical, that's the word, not elliptical. So that's helping to get the feeling of the roundness of the pot. This one, yes, it's got crosshatch or thereabouts. What's that stuff called? Straw. But it's also got these cylindrical shapes. So I'm constantly changing what's going on. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking I need another tone. Sorry about the boops and bobs on the video. I completely forgot to turn the sound off. So I am now adjusting, stepping back, half closing my eyes, looking at how things look in this composition, and I'm not unhappy with it. So I've been aware of the whole size of the border. I have paid attention to the darks and the lights, and I have focused in on individual items as well. I might tidy up some areas or make areas more prominent. So that's part of your focusing in, but the focusing in must not be to the detriment of the whole design. So think about all of those things. Now, as a last thing that I'd like to do, I am going to dare to stuff it up. Just quickly, I have got 3 watercolor pens. They're actually Winsor Newton watercolor pens, and this is the dare to stuff it up moment. I have got a wash pen here, a water brush, and I'm going to put some color in here. And I'm daring to stuff it up, but hey, it's not a masterpiece in the first place. I'm learning, and let's see what happens. Now this is on just ordinary cartridge paper, so I might not get the pen running as well as it would on watercolor paper, but let's give it a go. When you're using anything like this, by the way, watercolor pen or watercolor pencil, don't ever just scribble and expect those marks to disappear. You do need to put your marks in as you wish them to remain. So I'm daring to stuff up those simple back leaves that I said I was going to keep one tone, and I've now added some lines on, so we'll have to see how that works. Don't know what I've done with the lid. There it is. Let's put some dark in there as well. Oh my goodness, that is delicious. Try not to outline everything. I just started outlining and realized it's not that helpful. Now I've lost that pot. How's that pot working? Ah, okay, there it is. So that's it there, and there's the stones like that. Let's put some tone in there. I wonder if this dark blue will mix with the red to give our purple. What's happening? Am I stuffing it up yet? What do you reckon? So I haven't emphasized that there's a pot in the background. I don't really feel the need to, because it's hardly there, but I will show that that is coming in behind like that, and maybe I'll give these plants a stem because they really are getting lost in there. And my last color is a yellow. So these are basically my 3 primaries, but I've chosen particular versions of them. I've nearly stuffed it up. I don't know if I have or not, but I'm taking that chance. I think that's enough yellow for me, actually. Let's see if it moves with my watercolor brush. So I'm going to drop a few onto my hand, a little bit of water. Not working terribly well. Obviously things are dripping, so I'm just going to smear it with my hand. I don't usually use water pens on a vertical page, that's why it's dripping. But you've got to, there, that's the whole point. I'm quite liking how that dark is working. If you want to clean a colour off, I just do that in my hand like that. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing. I want to spread that red across a little bit. Oh, I don't mind that actually. Do I need a bit of glue? Now, it's very difficult to draw back onto wet paper, so I'll just do a couple of dots and dashes there. Which will give me some of that greenery, and I might... Have I lost the lights and darks? I'm not sure. My stones at the bottom probably need something. So that's when you're working, it's pulling to and fro all the time. I might darken underneath those stones so that they stand out a bit. Okay, I think that's enough for one Friday morning, hot Friday morning. I hope you've enjoyed the demonstration. Hope you've got something out of it. I would love to see your work. Please join our Get Drawing email group and our exclusive Facebook group. Go to KarenFrankel.com, click on Get Drawing to join the email group so that you get a heads up and a bit more information about what is going to happen on the Friday morning videos, and I will be sending out some extra things to those people as well. It's been lovely demonstrating for you. I love teaching, I love sharing my knowledge, and I love sharing these things with you. Let me know some comments. I'm happy to reply to them. Put a hashtag replay in the comments if you're coming back at a later time to look. And happy days if you're in Perth. Keep cool and get drawing. Bye.